Hey Scott, how are you?
I'm good, Mike. Hi.
Uh, it's been a wild week. I mean, we since we last talked, there's been a war begun, and apparently almost won at this point. So, I mean, it's a modern world. Things just seem. It doesn't take 4 years in the trenches anymore to, complete a war. Apparently, so it's had its effect here in the United States. One of them is, and this is the first piece of news this week. This was a surprise. Uh, Anthropic had rejected an update to its contract with the Pentagon because it felt the language didn't adhere to the company's red lines around the use of AI in mass surveillance and autonomous weapons. So the Pentagon dropped Anthropic, even though apparently there's a lot of people using Claude like crazy inside the Pentagon and elsewhere in government. And they signed with OpenAI for chat. And that led to some repercussions too, because the employees apparently at the San Francisco office of OpenAI Monday morning were writing in chalk in front of the place, "Where are your red lines? You must speak up. What are the safeguards?" Now, apparently, OpenAI had said that it was going to adhere to red lines and safeguards and all that. And then Sam just sort of changed his mind and signed on with the Pentagon. What do you think of all this?
Well, it's interesting. This was such a hot topic as the week ended into the weekend. We already saw all that chalk on Friday outside Anthropic headquarters and OpenAI headquarters, both based in San Francisco. This was a crazy few days, and it looked like Anthropic, by standing their ground, this is Dario Amodei, who had spun off. He left OpenAI to start
Yeah.
Anthropic because of safety concerns, sort of playing the white knight, standing up to the Pentagon and to President Trump. You and I have talked about how no tech executive has done that yet. They're all sort of, toadying to the president. So it was really interesting to see. At the same time, Sam Altman moves in and takes the place and takes the contract. And now there's sort of this back and forth. It almost seemed like the Pentagon in the initial days of the war in Iran used Anthropic's software, even after saying they're blacklisted, and yet is still going through the motions of trying to blacklist this company. OpenAI seems to be in, but meanwhile, the backlash against them continues. And OpenAI, now relegated to number two, I noticed in the Apple App Store, to Anthropic's number one. So we're seeing the public vote on this, even as the Department of War votes on it. And I think this story still has a lot to be told.
Even when our carriers around Iran are using Claude, uh, Anthropic's AI, and everyone I know is abandoning chat and going to and using Claude and some of the other new fifth generation or whatever it is systems because it's so good.
Yeah, I mean, for business, Anthropic really targeted the companies. For consumers, ChatGPT was sort of the choice, and that is basically what OpenAI was targeting. And in the military, you see they're making the choice, and they had chosen Claude, and then they blacklisted Anthropic. And at least for now, I mean, when you and I speak, it's Thursday night. We should say that this is such a timely thing going on with the price of oil, with gas, with stocks, with the debate over AI. We have to sort of timestamp these things because this
Yeah.
changes by the day and even by the hour.
Yeah, and we'll get into another one right now that's going to be changing by seems to be changing by the day. And that is the stock market. It's been flying all over the place, up 1100, down 1100 points. Uh, Today, Thursday, declined 784, but in between it rose higher a couple hundred points. And there's a sell-off being going on with Boeing and Caterpillar and all that, but most of this has to do with oil, as you
Right.
can imagine. I mean, Venezuela's off the radar for at least for a while now. Iran obviously isn't producing anything right now. Uh, China's desperate. And Russia's desperate for oil because Iran was a big source and Venezuela was a big source. Oil, U.S. crude is now over $80 a barrel. And that was good for the oil companies this week, but not real good for everybody else who depends upon energy, which is everybody.
Right. I mean, you're looking at gas prices. That's the easy target to say. Those have gone up where we sit in Silicon Valley by about 15 cents a day for 3 straight days.
Yep.
In some stations, even more. But also energy, transportation, getting things from place to place, that raises the cost. Getting people from place to place, travel, likely to go up as the price of oil stays high. And we really don't know how long this conflict lasts. That uncertainty is hurting stocks, but it's also putting a lot of fear of inflation. If the oil and energy prices stay high for a long period of time, we just don't know where this goes from here.
We don't. And, the fog of war, we're probably not going to go to know what's really going on until it ends. And given the statement by President Trump that it could last, 4 weeks, other people are saying it could last till the end of the year. And then we're in the business of, regime change and perhaps propping up a new regime. I mean, Iranian oil is not going to be in the market for anytime soon. So we may be in the midst of all this for months.
We could be, and it will be a test of how energy independent we have become over the last couple of generations, but also just how dependent we still are on places like the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. 20% of the world's oil moves through there, and we still depend on that. Europe still depends on that. And anything in the Middle East is just so wrought with potential concerns on so many levels, and here we are back in it.
Yeah, and we haven't heard we've now heard from Hezbollah, but we haven't heard from the groups on the Persian Gulf and around the Strait of Hormuz. Are we going to have to escort every oil ship going through the strait in perpetuity? And the dangers of our ships and the tankers getting hit by missiles, even if Iran goes offline, they still have, supporting states that could do a lot of damage and could basically control oil production for, years.
Yeah, I think the big concern is just how long this lasts.
Yeah.
And certainly, there are always lives in danger. And just how long is our government willing to do this? But also, like you mentioned, regime change, concerns about nuclear powers in the Middle East, our allies there. There's a lot going on, and it's always very complicated in that region.
Okay, well, as long as we're on energy, I know I'm sure you covered it, but there was a gathering of U.S. tech firm CEOs at the White House earlier this week, and they all pledged to bear the costs of energy for data centers. Apparently, the word has already gotten out that, as we talked about recently, towns don't get much back from having, giant power plants nearby feeding AI, because most of them don't have that many employees, and all they get for it is rising local bills, electrical bills, and apparently that's becoming known in the White House and in Washington, and U.S. tech firms, they were all there, pledged to bear the costs of energy for data centers. They'll pay for upgrades and new electricity and generation in agreement to mitigate concerns of rising bills. What do you think?
I think that's important. I think if they're going to have these data centers, and a lot of places are going to put up a fight because of what you just said, the idea that somehow the taxpayers would pay for that would go over like a lead balloon. And the companies that are making so much money right now on AI, they have to bear the costs of powering this. And the questions of how they're going to do it they're still unanswered. They're talking about smaller mobile nuclear reactors. They're talking about energy companies and grids here in town. We're talking about PG&E increasing the grid, but then again, PG&E traditionally passes along any cost that they have to their customers, and their customers get angry. That's something we deal with all the time. So it's almost like a state or a city saying, hey, we want to put a new NFL stadium here. And certainly the public says, well, that's great. We'll have concerts, we'll have games, we'll have some revenue, but who's going to pay for it? And usually the companies, in this case, the teams, have to step up and say, we'll pay for it. In this case, it's going to be the companies, because I don't think the individuals from these towns will benefit all that much.
Right. And now, another thing about energy, this is a very slightly different one. It's more micro, but Google has just introduced visible warning boxes on its Play Store listings for Android apps that drain excess energy. Apparently, you get a check, green check, or a red X. If you're an energy consumer, your app is. Google's going to warn you as a Google phone, Android phone user.
Yeah, I like this. I mean,
I do too.
Since the advent of apps, we've always wondered, do some apps use more energy than others? Can we leave them on our phone? Should we be getting rid of them when we're not using them? No one has come up with a definitive answer yet, but the idea of finding out that some do take extra energy, as we know, some take your contacts and your privacy and your data. So why not your energy? I think any information that's transparency about these things is a good idea, especially the Android App Store, which has been caught many times with apps that are not vetted all that well when it comes to cybersecurity and have been dangerous to have on your phone.
Okay, one of the companies, we'll do this one first. ChatGPT has announced that it's not going to pursue its app about doing direct checkout for when you buy tickets. They were going to go into that market, and apparently they've decided not to. They're not going to disrupt that world, and so shares of online booking companies had a good week, despite the bad stock market. They had a good week, and Broadcom. They announced, and this lifted this sector of the market quite a bit, is that they see a line of sight, unquote, into more than $100 billion in revenues from its AI chips in 2027. That's a positive piece of news. With all the concern about AI bubble and all that, Broadcom's announcement brought new life again back into the AI world, which has been suffering for the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Broadcom had a very good week. It's been a pretty good week, although a bouncy week for software and the stock market in general. But let's not forget that the recent history of software, just the explosion of these stocks because of AI, and how, remember, it was the chips first, but then the software part of the stack. So you've seen the Oracles, the Broadcoms, so many of these software companies just soaring, and then coming back down to earth. But then, things like earnings happen, and we realize they are making a lot of money off this. So I think software could end up the big winner in this AI revolution, and they're showing it already with some of these gains.
Okay, and finally, U.S. officials are debating a new regulatory framework for exporting artificial intelligence chips, and may require foreign nations to invest in U.S. AI data centers or security guarantees as a condition for granting exports of large numbers of chips. Now, Reuters broke that one. The rules aren't final yet, but it could be the first real attempt to regulate the flow of AI chips to U.S. allies and partners. Good idea? Bad idea?
I just think it's an idea that, given, and I'll quote Thomas Friedman here, the flat earth nature of it all, it's an idea that you just have to consider and probably go forward with. What company I don't know, doesn't want to sell to the world at this point, right?
Right.
And there are tariffs. That's why we don't see Chinese EVs here. It's too bad. I mean, come on, who doesn't want to see more electric cars cleaning the environment, giving people cheaper, better, more variety to these cars? So we put up these barriers, and I get it to an extent. But if we're going to be an AI powerhouse and justify some of these valuations for these American companies are going to have to do business all over the place.
Right.
Apple, would they be the smartphone leader if it weren't for China and Europe and places like that? I just think if this technology truly becomes something that the world needs, we're going to have to sell to the world.
Yeah, and we've seen this done before, that you get a market, an industry that takes off, it does really well, and then the federal government tries to harness it. It
I
tries
mean,
to
I
tax
understand.
it, it tries to tax it, it tries to constrain it, it tries to put regulations on it, and then it slowly chokes it, and the rest of the world catches up.
Right. I understand security concerns if we
Yeah.
are, in a skirmish somewhere. I mean, it's been said, look at our relationship with China. Can you imagine if we just did business with China? The world would hum. My goodness.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it is. There's almost this Cold War when it comes to business with China. And therefore, we don't want them to have access to some of our technology. I get that. But in terms of selling products, Tesla sells them cars, Apple sells them iPhones. And so eventually the AI can either go global, or we just have to rein in our expectations of how big and how lucrative this business can be, I think.
Well, speaking of China, you can't help sensing there's a larger plan here by the White House, that they're slowly going to choke off all the allies of China and basically defang the dragon. And this may be part of it. It may have nothing to do with exports to any other country but China.
Perhaps, but any sort of isolationism has rarely worked, especially in the business world. And I don't know how successful we would be doing trying to defang that. I mean, look at how dependent we are on Taiwan for chips and the relationship between China and Taiwan. And it brings us back to what you talked about at the very beginning today, the morass, the confusion, the uncertainty that exists in any Middle East conflict. And when things go global and we try to, walk a thin line between what we sell and what we don't, and who we keep out of the loop, it's so difficult.
Yeah, well, I was always taught, I'm sure you were too, that it was Smoot-Hawley that led to the Depression. But Smoot-Hawley was just one characteristic of a isolationism by the United States. And when you're the largest economy in the world and you just choke off everything, bad things happen. And so I worry that as we institute tariffs were one thing, but if we keep instituting this, America only, you have to invest here, we may pay for it in the short run, much less the long run.
Right. I mean, you bring up Smoot-Hawley. We're going through the tariff thing right now. And okay, our economy is still rolling along. We're still buying and selling things. But there is always a risk that if the economy wasn't so strong and we were ticking off China and Mexico and Canada, et cetera,
Yeah.
that we would suffer, and isolationism in any way. I'm not a historian, but I can't think of a way that that's helped America and American business in the past.
Well, there's always been the argument, well, we needed tariffs and isolation in the early 19th century during the federal period and right thereafter in order to build up our economy. But we're the biggest economy in the world. We're not struggling against, British imports overwhelming domestic industry. We are the domestic industry, and everybody else is responding to us. Different set of rules.
Correct.
So, anyway, that's it for the week. uh, You can see Scott. Well, you know where you can see Scott. You see him on NBC Bay Area and on X and on Meta Facebook. And we'll see you next week, everyone. Stay low, stay vigilant. It's a crazy time right now. Bye-bye.